Good morning, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome. For the next 45 minutes or so, we hope to be able to give you an insight into some of our thoughts about whether communal prayer is a collaborative experience for liberal Jews. To do that, we will each reflect on the transformation of Jewish communal prayer from sacrificial worship to service of the heart. We will also explore a little of our own experiences of communal prayer and leave you with some questions in your own mind to take into the Shabbat morning service shortly after this discussion. For most of us, when we think about communal prayer, we are probably immediately already thinking about the Siddur and the liturgy contained therein. But whilst the word liturgy in some ways translates the Hebrew word avodah, I don't think it ends there. Broadly speaking, I think I would define liturgy as the drama of worshiping God, because liturgy is not just the words that are recited. It is whether it's fixed or spontaneous, it also includes the actions, the occasions for the worship, and the gathering of the participants. Liturgy is in some ways akin to a screenplay, because different directors will do different things with screenplays, and so different liturgical moments also have their flexibility according to the director or the actor involved. Judaism has a broad range of liturgies. Worship in formal prayer in a synagogue at one of the appointed times is only one kind of Jewish liturgical expression, and I wouldn't even say it was the most common. The most common liturgical moments are those occasional blessings that we traditionally recite upon performing certain commandments or mitzvot, when we eat, when we experience a wondrous act of nature, rituals like wedding ceremonies, the Passover Seder, Brit Milah, putting a mezuzah on the doorpost of a new home. They're all liturgical activities that have their own choreography and text. So these are collaborative in the sense that we do these in collaboration with fellow Jews across time and geography. But what we really want to talk about today is the first one, and whether or not being together in a synagogue is a collaborative experience for us, or just a convenient way for lots of individual Jews to get together whilst they do their own thing. What's really interesting for me is that the way we worship now isn't at all how it always was. And the Jewish ability to give new meaning to old concepts, or to be completely able to reconceptualize something altogether is quite a testament to our ingenuity as a people. Our liturgy as it is today is designed for communal worship, but it includes so many prayers and concepts that would have been found in the temple in Jerusalem before it was destroyed. What we don't find in our modern synagogues is sacrifice in the way we would have found it in the temple. There are, according to the Bible, several things that can be sacrificed. And I think most people, if asked what was sacrificed in the temple, they would go to animals. But it was also possible for grain, wine, or incense to be offered as well. The general biblical word for sacrifice is korban. And I think it's really important that this word is derived from the Hebrew root, meaning closeness or nearness. So we can absolutely see already that the purpose of sacrifice was to bring people nearer to God. The smoke of the incense was understood by many ancient cultures, not just by Jews, to have literally carried the prayers, the devotion, the intentions of people upwards to God. And the sacrifice of animals and other goods was intended to do the same. The sacrifice itself was this massively dramatic performance by priests who wore elaborate clothing, stood at an elaborate altar in an elaborate building, and recited prayers, the whole time just singing and chanting and in some ways dancing on behalf of those who were watching. But I don't think it can be said that any of these performances were participatory in the way that the synagogue service is today. Beyond providing the material for sacrifice, the ordinary non-priestly people who were present at the temple wouldn't have been collaborating in the act in any other way. So for me, what you see in the temple is a real hierarchy of who can and who can't do formal liturgy. We know from biblical texts that sins were classified in levels according to their seriousness, and therefore the animal offered had to differ depending on what it was you were atoning for. We also know that women, for example, were required to offer sacrifice at specific times that didn't apply to men, such as after childbirth. But I don't really know how much one would successfully argue that this solidarity with those who were in the same situation with you was really a collaborative experience. I think I would argue that maybe the true collaborative experience in the temple would have come from the act of being together, to witness the sacrifice, to experience the smell, to dance and pray with other people who were also partaking, who also weren't partaking in the formal liturgy. In a way, making a distinction between keva, the formal side of things, and kavana, the intentional side of things, you see a real physical demarcation of these two things. And I wonder if perhaps it's the spirit of that that liberal Jews carry with us when we worship today. Now I give the floor to, well, metaphorical floor, to Rabbi Janet Burden.
Observed, the main form of worship for the earliest Jews was the sending up of a reach nichoach, a sweet savor to please or to appease God. Offering up words instead of sacrifices or incense was, at least at one time, so strange that when Hannah is seen by the high priest Eli pouring out her words of supplication, he assumed that she was simply drunk. Communal prayer in a form that might be recognizable to us today began in the Second Temple period with the creation of synagogues, both inside Eretz Israel and outside it, wherever the Jewish people dwelled. These synagogues served a dual purpose, functioning both as meeting places where community affairs could be discussed, as well as centers for prayer. Prayer at that time was still understood as an offering that somehow had to be sent up, kind of like the smoke, to God. For this reason, most communities would appoint, either formally or informally, a shaliach tzibur, an emissary or a public envoy, who would be responsible for leading, or more literally for sending or transmitting, the prayers of the community to God. Public worship was deemed to have greater merit than private prayer. The traditional explanation for this is that communal worship allows certain prayers to be recited or responded to. These specific prayers are well known to us. The community call to prayer, the Baruch Hu, the responses in the Kedusha, Kaddish, and so on. And you can find the references in Megillah 23b. However, with my sociologist hat on, I would judge that explanation to be circular. There had to have been an ab initio assumption that the power of prayer is magnified in a gathering. Whether that gathering has to be the number of 10 for a minyan was in dispute until the period of the Geonim, post-Talmudic. So how might our rabbinic sages have understood how this intensification of prayer would take place? Although I cannot find the original source for it, I was taught in the American conservative movement that the shaliach tzibur functioned like a prism, taking in light from all directions, concentrating it, and sending it up like a laser to pierce the heavens. If that were indeed how communal prayer worked, then it would be a collaboration par excellence. But much as I like that image itself, I see a number of problems with it as a model. First of all, I do not fundamentally believe that we are sending our prayers heavenwards or up in any meaningful way. Whilst I would not want to belabor the point, the Hebrew verb to pray, lahitpalel, is not transitive. Grammatically, at least, nothing is being sent anywhere. I understand that this might be a disturbing thought for some, especially those who think of God as a being out there. Personally, I've never believed in that kind of a God who might directly answer a supplication. Moreover, like Maimonides, I cannot accept the idea of a God who somehow needs our prayers. We are the ones who need to pray. Homiletically, we might observe that the verb's grammatical form, the hitpa'el, is reflexive. Are we listening to what we say, as Rabbi Lionel Blue used to ask? Are we working on ourselves? I like it. But as Rabbi Louis Jacobs noted, one can't really push that reading beyond the homiletical. The verb is a hitpa'el because it is somehow relational. Even a reflexive meaning is relational. It says something about our relationship to ourselves. There are other relations also expressed in the Hitpael form, one of which is reciprocity, as in the modern Hebrew Hitz Karev, a different form of the Kuf Resh Bet that Rafe referred to earlier, but that means to become close or to approach each other. I like that one much better. The most essential meaning of the Hitpael form of the root Pei Lamed Lamed offers yet another kind of relation, to intervene, interpose, hence to intercede or to arbitrate. Certainly, one traditional type of prayer is intercessionary, praying on behalf of others. That might have been what the priests were doing in the temple, but I certainly do not believe that this is what a rabbi or any other shaliach or shlichat tzibur is doing in a liberal Jewish context today. To paraphrase Rabbi Lionel Blue again, I am not a rabbi so that I might do Judaism for others. I am there to help people do Jewishly for themselves. Personally, I find that prayer works best when the focused intention of all present meets and connects. This is facilitated best by regular contact with each other and by sharing a common language for the speech act, if you will, that we call prayer. For me, that language is not just the Hebrew liturgy, but also the English of the translations, the framework of the meditations, and the understanding and the spirit of the poetry. The more we share these points of reference in common, the more connected we become. And that, for me, is the beauty of collaborative communal worship. And now I'd like to hand over to Ellie, who's been helping us to forge a way ahead in the collaborative nature of communal prayer.
Rafe and Janet have explored Jewish worship from the priestly service Avodah through the emergence of service of the heart, Avodah Shebalev, in which the Shaliach Tzibur, the emissary of the community, facilitates the communal experience. I would like to turn to the arena of liberal Judaism specifically. If we peruse the development of liturgy within LJ over the course of the 20th century, not only does it get longer and move towards greater inclusion of Hebrew, with the publication of Siddur Lev Chadash in 1995, we see the reintroduction of the traditional structure of services. So, for example, if we look at the Shabbat morning service in Siddur Lev Chadash, you will see that it's structured around a series of, these are Birchot HaShach, literally blessings of the morning, which are translated as morning prayers. Pesukei de Zimra, literally verses of song, translated as songs of praise. Shema uvechotecha, the Shema and its blessings. Tefillah, literally prayer, referred to as a daily prayer. Kriyat HaTorah, the reading of the Torah. And concluding with Aleinu and its companion prayer, Al Kain, followed by the Kaddish and Adon Olam, presented now with the heading Concluding Prayers and Songs. The only section that's missing, which is found in traditional liturgy, is Musav, the additional service between the reading of the Torah and the concluding prayers in which the Tefillah is repeated. In the draft Shabbat morning service introduced in 2018, we have made the structure of the service even more explicit, with the introduction of explanatory passages ahead of each section and a running list of the service sections on the far left of a double page, indicated in bold. Oh, I've done it again. In the draft Shabbat morning service introduced in 2018, we've made the structure of the service even more explicit, with the introduction of explanatory passages ahead of each section and a running list of the service sections on the far left of a double page, indicating in bold the particular section of the service. In addition, the service flows continuously without the need to jump pages 3 times to get to the Shema and its blessings, the Torah service, and finally the concluding prayers. I'd like to begin my remarks in response to the question, is communal prayer a collaboratory experience for liberal Jews by posing another question. From the perspective of congregants, in what way does highlighting of the structure of the service in Siddur Lev Chadash and the new prayer book Siddur Shirah Chadashah make a difference to the experience of participating in the service? I shall leave this question with you and explore an element in the structure of the service that's not immediately explicit, which relates directly to the dynamic between the individual and the community. Some of the sections mark major turning points in the service. The most significant of these is the Shema and its blessings. This section begins with the Baruch Hu, the call to prayer. If you look at the 1967 prayer book, Service of the Heart, you will see that it opens with the Baruch Hu. This may seem unremarkable. After all, the service is beginning, so it seems obvious that the community is being called to prayer. So why, in the traditional structure followed by Siddur Lev Chadash and Siddur Shirah Chadashah, is the Baruch Hu postponed so that it follows the morning blessings and the songs of praise? The traditional structure of the service recognizes that when we arrive at the service, we are not yet we. Each individual enters the service as an individual. So the opening sections of the service, couched variously in the I form and the we form, express the concerns and perspectives of the individual, which are simultaneously and paradoxically universal concerns. The blessings, prayers, and songs acknowledge the individual's experience of being alive. For example, Elohai neshama shenatata bi tohorahi. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. It is only when we, that is each individual, has had time to explore their personal, universal concerns, that all the individuals gathered together for the service actually come together as a community with the Baruch Hu. And then, having come together, we go on to recite our core beliefs as a people, that God is the creator of the world, the one who reveals Torah as an act of covenantal love to the people Israel, the eternal one, and following the Shema, the liberator of the people Israel from Egypt onwards. The evening service adds an additional blessing, recognizing God as the one who spreads over us a shelter of peace as we face the prospect of going to bed. It's important to note, by the way, that the Shema and its blessings not included in Mincha, the afternoon service, because the Shema is only recited when we lie down and when we rise up. So the theory underlying the structure of the service is that in order to be a community at prayer, individuals need time to prepare themselves to become a community at prayer. But what about the practice? Do individuals feel that they're on a journey into communal prayer? Do individuals feel that communal prayer is collaborative, enabling each one of us as an individual to share in a collaborative communal experience?
That's actually a really interesting question, Ellie, because I think for me, communal worship has taken on so many guises over my life, I guess. In some ways, I think I definitely approach worship as an individual. I definitely turn up to the synagogue as an individual, but there's to sort of bring it back to where I was talking about drama. There's definitely the drama brings everything together for me, and I think what's really interesting is finding ways as individuals, as separate Jews en masse in a synagogue, finding ways to be the priest in the temple, to not just rely on the rabbi to create something for us. Again, going back to what Janet said, the rabbi's job for me is to lead, but not to do for. And I think I don't know. I think that for me at least, liturgy, communal worship, it has to be a collaborative experience. Otherwise, it doesn't quite work. And yes, it has different parts at different stages where one of us is the leader or one of us is not the leader. But that's for me, it just doesn't work if it's not collaborative. And I think whether we all as liberal Jews approach it that way, I don't know. But definitely I have, tried over the years to get to that point. I mean, Ellie, I don't know if it's the same for you.
Well, it's really interesting that you should say it like that, because I think that actually I've not reflected so much about my individual experience until I was in a situation and faced with my first ever streamed service in an empty synagogue. And I'm doing more or less the same thing. I'm addressing the congregation, I'm addressing a camera, I'm leading, prayers, I'm inviting people to participate. We've mentioned the page numbers and all of that. And I'm singing, and I'm presuming people are singing at home. But it doesn't feel like that at all. So it feels like I'm sort of an individual who's been marooned somewhere. And it feels very, very weird. My whole body language, I move quite a lot in the service. I sort of sway a lot. I'm sort of very engaged and responding to the sense of what's going on in the service and people's voices and everything. And I find that with the camera, I'm sort of standing quite rigidly, thinking I must look in the right direction. And actually, but what it comes back to is actually the experience of being an individual. When I enter anything, I've come on a journey like everybody else has, from home and whatever was going on for me that morning, and whatever I'm feeling and the things that I've been thinking about. And when I come to the synagogue, I begin to sort of shed that a bit and connect with people as I walk in and say hello and do all of those things. But it's only when I'm in the service that actually the sense of what we're doing together takes me over. And so my individual concerns and preoccupations somehow they're not pushed aside and they're not suppressed, but the energy involved in those the personal feelings I have, that energy gets translated into what we are doing together. And for me, that is collaborative. And I'd be interested to know, what do you think, Janet? I mean, how do you relate to this?
Well, it's interesting what you say. I actually experience Zoom services differently than what I assume that people feel when they're doing streamed services, because I can read people's faces a little bit. Although I can't hear them singing with me, I can see whether they are or not. So that there is a difference there for me. But the idea of being all together in one room, my strongest feeling of an effective prayer was actually the day John and I got married. I felt bodily held, really almost bodily held by the people in that room as they sang Psalm 100, the Hariu, and people came together, and it's about this focused intention of everybody in the room meeting and connecting, and that buoyed us up somehow. And I have never quite managed to achieve it. I would love to be able to say that I could feel that in a service. I recognize what you're saying, but often, I wish it weren't true, but often I worry that I do end up just saying words or performing to help. I'm aware of what other people need. I lose myself sometimes in it. And that the idea of there being an outside focus, seems really important to me. I know that's a peculiar way of thinking about it, but there's something about the communal prayer when there is an intention. I feel it on the High Holy Days too. Again, very differently than in the regular Shabbat services.
Yeah. I don't know if people often say to me that the idea of the high holy days is kind of it's a little bit like Marmite. You either love them or you hate them. And I've got friends who absolutely love the Yom Kippur service. I love the Yom Kippur service. It's so intense. It's so everyone is going through that intensity at the same time, and there is something in that for me is not always in the regular Shabbat service, because when something becomes part of your routine, I guess, you start to see it differently. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's different for you as rabbis who are effectively leading these services, or whether you can remember a time when you felt it differently. I'm interested to know that, because you know, I'll be where you are within 5 years, and I'm just interested whether I'm going to lose that feeling of Yom Kippur, or whether in your experience, you know, it's really interesting. I don't know, Ellie, if you have experienced the same thing as Janet.
I actually don't lose that. I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, I find Yom Kippur intensely engaging, but I also find Shabbat intensely engaging. And I think one of the reasons for this, I've got some peculiar things actually in my personal history. You know, I was brought up in a family which in a way was quite secular, although we did Friday night, but my dad wouldn't do anything because he was a universalist, and my mum had come from an Orthodox background. But my Bubba lived with us, my mother's mother, for a year, and she used to take me to the Federation Synagogue at the top of the road. And I used to sit with her. And so I was completely immersed in the sort of wave of the music and the way people sang. And it had a really big, and the other times would be when we had a huge family. My mother was the 9th child. It's when we went to family simchas, or when we had Shiva. And there was something about what being with people like that, what happened. It was just amazing. And so I do have a strong sense of that. And I think the mediating thing is music, is the singing. And I mean, this may be an unpopular thing to say in a liberal Judaism context, but I much rather sing the whole service than read it. And, you know, because I do think it's something else happens when we engage, that somehow the musicality engages another part of our brain that isn't just intellectual, and which sort of transforms us in somehow, but as individuals, but also transforms us as a community. And one of the ways that happens in our services in the Kedusha, when we do Lador Vador, we do it as a kind of call. The service leader, it could be me or somebody else, does Lador Vador, and everybody else, everybody comes back with Lador Vador. And it's just so powerful, and that sense of what we're doing together. So I have to say, personally, I haven't felt like that. And in fact, that's been the problem with stream services, that I've been conscious of performance, and that has completely taken the spirit out of me. And I hope that it doesn't show, but I certainly feel it.
Well, we promised that we would leave people with some questions to think about, and I think I speak for all three of us when I say that I hope that what we have presented will leave you with some questions. But I know that, Ellie, you have some specific questions for people to just hold in their mind as they enter the Shabbat service.
Yeah, well, I'm conscious that obviously this session is before the Shabbat morning service, and it would be nice to think that somehow there was a connection between the sessions and the service. So yeah, there are 3 questions which I think are going to appear on a screen so everybody can see them. So the first of this is, what difference, if any, does the highlighting of the structure of the service in the Siddur make to my experience of participation? What helps me on my journey into communal prayer as I participate in the service? And finally, the third question, in what ways am I invited as an individual to share in a collaborative communal experience? And it would be great if people would kind of reflect on those questions at the Shabbat morning service.
Thank you for those, Ellie, and from me anyway, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for watching with us. We hope that you found something to take away from that. Our next session on collaborative communities is starting slightly earlier than planned and will start at 9:50 this morning instead of 10 o'clock. So that's at 9:50. But until then, we'll leave you with some more of the Lily's Legacy podcast.
I had to get there because it's not around the corner like I could walk there. I'd get to the tube to go. And so I joined that one. I thought it'd be a nice afternoon and get home. It's okay, it's still light. After service, it's not that long. And I enjoyed it because I got to know people. And a lot of our members from the old shul joined.
The Shabbat morning services are in the afternoon. They're at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I think it's 3 or 2. And that is because Lily Montague, probably 100 years ago, or maybe a bit less, decided that it was really important that the young Jewish women who worked in the factories and the shops and the offices, I think, and had to work on Saturday morning or they wouldn't have a job, that it was really important for them to be able to have somewhere to have a weekly Shabbat service.
At that time, in the 20s, the West End had a fairly big Jewish population which supported quite a number of synagogues. But of course, most were Orthodox or United. And the services were, for obvious reasons, held on Saturday mornings. Now, they weren't all that well attended, certainly by the women. The women had to work. And the West End at that time was the centre of a very prosperous clothing industry. And they worked 5.5-day week. Saturday afternoon and Sunday, you were left to yourself. But the services were on Saturday morning. And certainly Jewish girls that had been in Lily's club couldn't attend. So Lily decided she would do the Shacharit service on Saturday afternoon. And of course, built the West Central congregation around that situation. And here we are still holding our services at West Central on a Saturday afternoon.
And I love that, that even as early as 100 years ago, that kind of flexible and what I would call advanced thinking was already in operation. So I like that story. I just like that they did it and that here we are.
And it's wonderful. It means that people don't have to get up early in the morning to get, depending on the synagogue, some liberal synagogues services start at 10 o'clock, but the majority are at 11 o'clock. Who's awake at 11 o'clock?
Lily Montague, I never knew her, but I did serve for a time in the community that she started, that started out life as the West Central Club for Jewish Working Girls. And what I loved about her approach to Judaism, she herself did not understand herself to be a liberal Jew necessarily. She had grown up in the Orthodox world. And what was difficult for her is that amongst the girls at the Jewish Working Girls Club, there were so many of them where the official community, the Orthodox community, said, you work on Shabbat, so you can't be a good Jew, so we don't have anything to do with you. And instead of judging them for wanting to help their families and to bring in some income and needing to work on Saturday mornings if they were going to get a job and working in shops or in the rag trade, Lily Montague said, how can I give the gift of Shabbat back to these girls? So she set up the club so that they could come and have a Saturday morning service, even if it was at 3 in the afternoon. And I thought, yeah, that's where I always want to start with where people are. And if I can do that, then I will have fulfilled something of Lily's legacy.
Her recognition that you've got all these Jews that are not going to fit in to mainstream Orthodox Judaism simply because of the working reality of, you know, not being able to work on Shabbat and all the rest of it. She recognized, you know, that something must be done to make people just become more included. And the reality would have been that if it wasn't for a liberal Judaism idea, so many Jews would have been lost, either become indifferent to their heritage or become Christian.
I met my husband at a wedding, and the wedding was conducted by Lily Montague. Instead of a male conducting it, it was a woman. I know that sounds a bit futile, but I've always been a feminist, so it didn't seem to me to be unreasonable. Because I'd been so sort of alienated from Orthodox Judaism that I never went to synagogue. So what, you know, I wasn't really aware of how at that time so few women were involved. It just seemed okay. And the reason she conducted it was not only that her family were members. Her mother had been one of Miss Lily's girls at the West Central, so it was very appropriate that she conducted the wedding. And that's actually, I suppose it must have been the first time I'd seen a woman conduct a marriage ceremony. Now it's quite absolutely normal. The founders of the Belsize Synagogue, and it was called the New Liberal Congregation then, were indebted to Lily Montague. They were all German refugees. They came from German Reform Judaism. The founders, I can't remember the exact year, but it's probably something like 1938. They could have stayed independent, or they could have joined the British Reform movement. And they chose to join the liberal movement because they were so indebted to Lily Montague. Now, Lily must have done an enormous amount for them to say, we'll join your movement.
When my cousins came to England, they also set about getting visas for the rest of the family. And one of those visas I got to come to England. Now, how was I going to get there? Nobody else had a visa. And my father advertised me in the Jewish Chronicle. And he got several replies. But he finally accepted an offer from a Jewish family in London, a doctor's family. This family was a part of the Liberal Jewish Synagogue. And the Liberal Jewish Synagogue at that time had a chairman, Lily Montague. She was the chairman. She realized what was happening on the continent. She called the meeting and she said, we must help. And several families came forward. And in fact, the Liberal Jewish Synagogue made it possible for 3 children to come to England. I came from Vienna. Another one came from, I think, Germany. And I'm not quite sure where the third one came from. But anyway, the date finally came. And I was on one of the very first Kinder transports leaving from Vienna. I would just say she saved my life.
My parents arrived in January 1939, and my mother was 8 months pregnant, and it was a very difficult time to leave, as you can imagine. In fact, I can't imagine it at all. But Lily was personally very, very supportive and incredibly helpful, arranged for my mother's confinement, had people, or indeed herself, help to find accommodation for them. They lived in Stoke Newington. They had a room somewhere above a shop. It was very simple, it was very basic, but it was safe, and that was crucial. My father became an assistant to Rabbi Matuk at LJS. That was his first position here, all thanks to Lily. My father was basically Lily's boy. Wherever she needed him to go, whatever she needed him to do, he would happily do it.
At 47, I was a nurse in Birmingham, and another colleague of mine showed me a letter, and she said, "This is from Lily Montague from London." And I said, "Who is she?" And he said, "She is a lay rabbi, and she sends me a letter every month to strengthen me and help me. As a refugee, I have many obstacles, and I'm so glad she writes to me." And I said, "Why doesn't she write to me?" And she said she doesn't know you. And then later on, when I met my husband, we got married, he said, "We're going to be married by Lily Montague." And I said, "Oh, that's lovely. I've even heard of her." And he said, "We're invited to her home, and we'll have tea there." And I was most impressed, and I felt very humble in her presence. And she was very natural and asked us what we did, a doctor and a nurse. I remember her sermon, which had the theme of giving service to other people. And then she came another time to our synagogue here. When she gave the blessing at the end of the service, I really felt this was like a high priest in the old days in the temple. And I shall never forget it.
When my father was rabbi in Dublin and rabbi in Liverpool, we came to London quite a lot for conferences, and we came as a family, and we used to stay in Bayswater. We stayed in the house, and we were guests in the house, and that was always very elegant and very English and very revelatory, because it was not what I was used to, or my sister, but we were always very, very charmingly received and very, very beautifully looked after. So she was very, very, what one might call hands-on, but very much a product of her generation. But I do find it strange, and it does make me smile, the image that I have of her as being very formal and very old-fashioned. But I have the knowledge that she was a radical. Those 2 points are hard to reconcile. And to me, that makes me smile, because I don't think of her as a rebel. I can't think of her as a rebel, because she, to me, was personified as this very, very senior lady in black and wearing a hat. Or she actually reminded me of a European advocate. You know, she looked very much part of establishment as opposed to radical. She must have had the most wonderfully persuasive way of getting her way, because she didn't do it by violent argument.
I didn't know her as such, but she used to be around all the time. She was often on the beamer, the Almema, as we called it in those days. I remember her turning around once. She was wearing her purple hat. They had like is it a seven-sided hat they used to wear? I can't remember, with the tassel on the top. And she said, "I think I am a quarter rabbi." Well, those were the days she couldn't become a rabbi, a woman rabbi. I didn't know her well. I'd heard stories of her, though, from my husband, who used to work at the settlement in the East End. He always used to tell the story of when she came down one day. She'd been in a hurry and she'd put her dress on back to front. And even the girls in her group couldn't turn around and say, "Miss Lily, you've got your dress on back to front." She wouldn't care. She was always looking after other people and being very charming, if a little austere.
Lily Montague's always been an enormous influence on my life. One of my heroines, I suppose I'd say. She was an enormous influence on my father, Rabbi Harry Jacobi, and I don't think he'd have been able to become a rabbi without her support. And I grew up knowing about her, looking back at the letters that Lily Montague sent my dad and my mum. We were thinking how she had time to write all these letters. So when I was born, she wrote a lovely letter. And when my mum arrived in the country, she wrote a lovely letter. And she was so unfailingly supportive at the time when other people, because my dad had left school at 14, and there were some other people who just didn't think he'd cut it. And she had this faith in him. So, you know, apart from being an amazing figure, she just believed in people. That's really important. She's, for me, a role model who, for her faith and her work in the world were just inseparable.
This podcast series of oral histories is part of the exhibition Lily's Legacy, Voices and Visions of Liberal Judaism, a project supported by the National Lottery Heritage Fund. It was produced by Mary Lawrence and Lucia Scazzaccio, sound editing and design by Lucia Scazzaccio, and special thanks to all the contributors who agreed to share their stories. For more information about what you've just heard, do visit the exhibition website, www.lilieslegacyproject.com. You're listening to Lily's Legacy, a podcast series compiled from oral histories and produced as part of a digital exhibition exploring how liberal Judaism has evolved since it was co-founded by British visionary Lily Montagu in 1902. This episode explores a theme of founders and pioneers of liberal Judaism. This series of podcasts, and the exhibition of which it is part, honours the contribution of Lily Montagu to the foundation of liberal Judaism. Lily founded the movement with Claude Montefiore and Israel Mattock. Together, they were known as the 3 M's. In this episode, participants paid tribute to the 3 M's, as well as other pioneers and influential figures. For over a century, liberal Jews have been indebted to the dedication of a number of liberal rabbis and lay readers. Some of them are remembered and honoured in this episode.
When I first became a liberal Jew, we were very much influenced by the 3 M's, Rabbi Mattock, Lily Montagu and Claude Montefiore.
Certainly here we've sold 3 M's quite often, but it's a very distant memory to most. I go to text class on Tuesdays and Alex was going round about things like kashrut, and quite a lot of the text class are brought up on Israel Mattock's book, The Essentials of Liberal Judaism. But the next generation think quite differently. His was a fairly radical Judaism. First of all, you chucked out kashrut. Secondly, you chucked out head covering. You checked out the book having to go LIC back to front. You cut out Hebrew. You didn't have Hebrew was an optional subject which you did at religion school when I was a child here. And there was no need to bother to learn Hebrew because we didn't use Hebrew. And a choir up and a choir loft, it was a non-Jewish choir singing. I think there was a concentration on the spirituality, which I notice is now debunked, possibly because, of course, modern theological ideas they've changed and things have changed. The concept of belief in God, which was absolutely fundamental to the 3 M's, has been so much changed.
Dr. Mattock.
Welcome everybody to Liberal Judaism's Biennial 2020 and to our very exciting panel, Collaborative Communities. I'm very excited to be with such a panel of really unique and interesting workers within and with outside liberal Jewish communities, not only in Britain, but also in Europe, and with each of us in some ways in other parts of our lives as well. I'm Rabbi Leah Jordan. I'll be moderating this panel, and you'll get to meet all of our 5 guests, hopefully as they speak individually and as we talk amongst ourselves in discussion on this particular theme of this biennial, collaboration in liberal Jewish communities. I think they asked me to moderate this because for many years I was the community rabbi of Norwich Liberal Jewish Community, which is a smaller regional community in East England. We did a lot of interfaith work within the Norwich and East Anglia region, and also collaborated a lot with other Jewish communities, both progressive and non, throughout East England. I'll hopefully be able to bring in some of that expertise, but I really wanted to turn it over to our guests today. And to speak on the theme of collaboration first, I wanted to ask Mark Phillips, who is co-chair of Mosaic Jewish Community in London, who is an especially interesting identity and case of community. And I'm really excited to hear from Mark and to tell us a bit more about that.
Hi, everybody. Great to be with you. As Leah kind of introduced me, I'm currently co-chair of Mosaic Jewish Community, which brings together a liberal, a reform, and a Masorti synagogue into one new community. This is coming up to year 21 of our journey that I, as an idiot probably, have been involved in since day one, when we were asked to do a strategy piece for what was then the Reform Synagogue. And if there's only one takeaway from this, it would be to ask at the beginning the question, why? And our whys of why we went down this route were, when we were honest with ourselves, we just couldn't respond to the kind of challenges we were seeing coming down the line. And that's about increasingly different attitudes to Judaism, not just across generations, but just the diversity of our communities. And how could we possibly respond to that? In London, we're affected by the impact of Jewish day schools, and that again produces a shift in what we need to think about. We've also got ongoing geographic shifts as our community continues to move and increasingly be less concentrated in some respects into traditional Jewish areas. So those are a set of challenges which we didn't feel we could respond to suitably on our own. And there were a bunch of things we wanted to be able to do. We wanted to reach out to the marginally involved. We wanted to continue to provide support to the ageing community. I could go on and on about that. But then the question was, well, what do we do? We brought together the 3 synagogues. That took over 10 years to get that thinking agreed. And it's around a set of principles and visions around being a new kind of community that can respond to those challenges and take the opportunities that we have. And those opportunities are huge. So we've pretty much brought everything together across the community other than how we pray. And even sometimes we do pray together, but normally we would have 3 or sometimes 4 different services going on. Everything else, whether that's education, community support, which particularly at the moment has been such a huge factor for us, being able to operate as one community, has been an amazing experience. I'm going to stop there, I think, because that's probably enough of me rambling on. So I hope that gives you some context of what we're up to.
Thank you so much, Mark. As someone who's been myself to Mosaic only recently, I loved getting to experience the Kiddush, the cross-communal Kiddush that you do at the end, where you have the Masorti, Reform, and Liberal communities all there together. I think even just that one little insight that I had into ways in which you can pray separately and do things together, that's a really beautiful model, and one I think that a lot of us admire as reputation as it has grown out in the community. So we're really excited to have you and to hear more from you about all of that. And I'm glad too that you have a special sort of background in having helped put that together, so you can speak more to that with us today. I wanted to turn it over now to Rabbi Sandra Kvyat, who is the rabbi of Crouch and Havarah here in London. Here I say, it's where I'm sitting, and also rabbi of Shirat Zafon, the liberal Jewish progressive community in Copenhagen. I think I got that a bit out of order, but Sandra, you can tell us more about it all.
Yes, thank you, Leah. Progressive, I guess, is what we call it in Europe. There's no understanding of difference between liberal and reform. So I've been a rabbi for nearly 10 years, and before I was ordained, as you all know, we of course as students work with small community, any community really, in our years. So I guess it's come up to a lot of years actually. And I guess my experience and expertise is in small communities in particular. I was blessed to actually be with Janet Bachman in Peterborough, one of my very first, nearly very first high holiday. I can't remember if it was that one actually. And that has been my main experience of working with small community, both in my community role as well as my LJ role. So I was working for LJ for nearly 10 years. And collaboration wise, one of the really interesting things I was doing was the converts and proselytes in communities without rabbis. How do you do that? So we figured out a way of doing it where it was kind of like being a satellite rabbi, helping the communities and helping the individual. And I think that really taught me an important thing about collaborating both as a rabbi in the community and as a visiting one, which is, on the surface, our communities will look a lot alike. You know, they're liberal, they're in a certain areas, you know, outside of London, they're fairly geographically spread. And it's easy to think that, oh, just because we're all liberal and maybe have the same demographic, we're all the same. And that's the big learning I think I've had is that's not the case. So I'm a rabbi for both Crouch End and Copenhagen. You think they look really a lot alike, you know, and Copenhagen is a very progressive country. You cannot always transfer things. I can't write one thing for one community and necessarily reuse it in a different community. Not just the cultural context of the different countries, but just geographically. And I found the same, like writing for something in Crouch End cannot translate directly to a different part of the UK. It's a very different context. So we have to be careful with that. At the same time, there's such blessing in collaborating. And, you know, this pandemic has actually shown that we can do lots of stuff together. And so suddenly now, I have Friday night services, or we call them welcoming in Shabbat. So we talk and we share and we do blessings with both communities at the same time, and they're shared. And we weren't sure whether we could do it or not, but it actually worked out really well. People love it now. And now I can do more for Copenhagen, though I'm not physically there most of the time. So there's a lot of different things, but we should be very aware, I think, of each individual identity of the communities, because they shouldn't be afraid of we shouldn't be afraid of collaborating, but we do need to be quite clear that we can't collaborate on absolutely everything. And it's also important to have things for each community that is just theirs. You know, that's their kind of way of doing things. But I love small communities, my favorite thing. I love working with small communities and the joy and the creativity that it creates, because we are on our own most of the time, in a sea of non-Jews, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Sandra. I mean, you know, as a friend and work colleague of mine, how interested I am in communities outside of Britain and in Britain. And we've spent a lot of time talking about how individual and different they all are. And I'm excited that we have you here, especially because I know right before the pandemic began, you were working on a regional network within Scandinavia, right? Of putting together and collaboration between smaller Jewish communities, which I'd also love if there's a moment to hear more about that. The work you've done, I think you do a lot of code switching, meaning figuring out, as you said, what the individual customs are of different places, whether that's Crouch End in North London or Copenhagen, your childhood community, and figuring out how you really speak to different communities that, as you say, look on the surface may be very similar, but actually, I think it resonates with all of us when you say that we're all our unique, eccentric communities. I think that's something that we
didn't say eccentric.
I added that because I think that that's key to liberal Jewish communities for sure, and I love very much. So thanks so much. Hopefully we'll get back to more of those specifics. I'm excited now to turn over to our next panelist, Owen Power, who is a member of Manchester Liberal Jewish Community, as well as an associate member of York Liberal Synagogue. So you come bearing the hats of two progressive northern British communities, as well as being an activist for accessibility within Jewish communities. So we're really excited to hear from you, Owen. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Leah. Greetings from Manchester, and it's absolutely wonderful to be talking to so many members of our progressive community today. Now, as you could imagine, as someone who is deaf, gay, an immigrant, and a Jew, you can imagine that I've got quite a lifelong experience of protest and rattling cages. Now, from the point of view of a deaf person, if you think about it, there's quite significant difficulties to be able to participate as a member of a shul, because the heart of a shul service is based on the spoken word. There is very, very little visuals. There's no ceremonies as such in the sense of bell ringing, incense, robes, etc., etc. So initially, when I joined my community about 9 years ago, I just expected to sit back and, not to have a fuss and just savor the atmosphere. Now, obviously, I knew the liturgy and I knew what was going on, even though I could not actually hear. So it was all guesswork. So I went along with this for a number of years. Then, because circumstances in the community changed, because we were a very small community, we really needed to collaborate with Liberal Judaism head office, as I call them, plus Leo Beck. So as a result of that, we were allocated a student rabbi, Lev Taylor. Now, Lev came to the community, and for me, it was a game changer because he reached out to me and gave me the opportunity to come in and actually get involved. He asked the right questions in terms of how could he make it possible for me to participate. And this was a huge help. We met for dinner, we discussed ways and means. As a result of that, Lev asked me to lead a class on Jewish views of disability, which was a great opportunity for me to explain basically how it was for someone who is deaf, how what the obstacles are, the difficulties, so on and so forth. Now, one thing led to another. I managed to get the drosha published as a blog and was able to circulate it to different organizations just to start the process of awareness. Now, fortunately, once Lev moved from our community to take up its next placement, the next student rabbi was Gabriel. He continued in the same vein, but he thought he was totally unfazed about details such as where one sits. Because if you think about it, traditionally people are extremely funny about not moving furniture, sort of everyone must sort of stick to the same places, basically on the basis of this is the way we've always done things. But I worked with Gabriel and we found out that I really find it easier if I sat next to him. He's totally relaxed about that. And so I'm now really able to participate much more. And it's really a great deal easier. Now, the next step is sort of reaching out to other progressive communities. Now, fortunately in Manchester, we have a really brilliant progressive Rabbi Robin. And she reaches out pretty much to everyone. It doesn't really matter where you come from or who you are. So I went to one of her services. Now, her response, she knew me through Facebook, so I didn't have to explain I was deaf. She literally took me by the hand, plonked me beside her, and we sat together for the service, and that made things easier. The point I'm making here is, though, it's just by asking and trying to find out and being flexible and to listen, things can be made much easier for people who are deaf. Now, can I just make one or two points about the impact of the coronavirus? Now, that to me has been a great change on a positive level, because I firstly discovered Zoom, which is something I really never thought about beforehand. Now, Rabbi Mark Solomon decided to reach out to pretty much everyone who wanted to attend his Seder. So I gladly went, now not having used Zoom before. Now my first real surprise was the way Mark set it up. I could actually read the Haggadah as the service moved, because he kept zooming it in to the part that he was speaking. So this was really a great new tool. And I'm just thinking in terms of after the lockdown, etc., how we might be able to use IT to enable people with hearing issues to follow what is going on. Now, I'm also, sorry, just mumbling a little. One of the things, though, Gabriel had his first service with us about 2 weeks ago, and he also made use. So again, we were able to follow the Seder throughout. So definitely, this is a really great opportunity. Still on the theme of collaboration, we as a small community will be linking up with Yorkshire to share Gabriel for the High Holy Days. So this again is collaboration at work, and I'm really, really pleased about it. Now, I must say, though, that it seems some people fear collaboration. And I think it's because they fear change. But in my case, I must say I am a total admirer of Lily Montague, because I just love the way she really sort of looked at the need of our communities on the here and now, nothing to do with the way we did things before. So I sort of use Lily as a good sort of role model to fight for change and get away from this. We've always done things this way and we're going to continue. Change is good. Okay, back to you, Leah.
Thank you so much, Owen. I think there were a lot of themes that came out to me there. One of the ones I wanted to resonate with is something you've mentioned to some of us panelists before we started this, and a little bit in email to some of us, which is that I think with accessibility and disability issues, people, you've said, can be overly shy or awkward, but actually all it takes is asking an opening question. And I thought that was through your comments about student rabbis Lev and Gabriel, and that's if we're not going to learn from each other, and if we're not
that is exactly it.
I thought that is something it's a good reminder to all of us. So thank you to bring that theme out, as well as other themes around collaboration in general. That's great. Thank you. I'm very happy now to turn over to Janet Barkman, who is currently the Honorary Secretary of Peterborough Liberal Jewish Community, and is going to share with us some of her experiences working with Peterborough in the liberal Jewish community.
Thanks very much, Leah. I think the first thing to say about Peterborough is that if you like, Peterborough is a bit of an oasis in the desert. We're nowhere near any other communities. The closest is Leicester, who's 40 miles away. And so there are things that we can do on our own, but I think, and I think it came to a head about 6 years ago. My husband and I only joined Peterborough in 2013, but in 2014 it was pretty obvious that, if you like, we were suffering an existential crisis. That membership was very low, and at one point we were practically in single figures. And it was only with the support and guidance, very practical, from LJ, that we're still here. We started, we were very small. Danny Rich helped us to get ourselves back on track. And I think, if you like, the lesson in terms of collaboration is really there's an absolute wealth of knowledge and expertise, experience, and I think particularly goodwill within the LJ community. And really, you only have to ask, and it is there. We had tremendous support from Danny Rich, from Ruth Seeger, who is our link officer, and we were really fortunate when recovering from our difficult situation that Rabbi Sandra was allocated to us, which was absolutely marvelous, and we really enjoyed having her with us. In a way, you know, Copenhagen's gain was our loss, but we do appreciate that you can only spread yourself quite so thinly. And we have, if you like, because we're small, we're still very small. We do have, in total at the moment, we have 54 members, and that includes children. We do manage normally to have Shabbat, a monthly Shabbat service with about 20 to 25 attendees, and we try to support and celebrate all the festivals that we can. And we've always been supported by this through LJ, and in particular organizations and communities such as Northwood and Pinner, where we had contact very early on, and the choir have been for a couple of times, which is absolutely magical, because when you're in a small community, it's wonderful to have that sort of volume of voices within a service, and it really enriches the experience. And we've continued with the relationship with Northwood and Pinner. And we have been so fortunate, I think, to have the support of LJ. And I say, in a way, we're very good at giving people the opportunity to collaborate with us and support us, because we're not afraid to ask. And I don't think we've ever been disappointed in the response that we've had. Is that enough for the moment, Leah?
That's great.
So it looks like we might have oh, there's Leah.
Just testing you're all awake. Disappear for a moment. No, there's some sort of technical issue.
Edit that bit out.
Yeah, hopefully I won't disappear again. I was just saying, Janet, I know you and I discussed right before this being progressive Jewish oases in the desert. Norwich liberal Jewish community certainly resonates with that experience. And I think that it's something that I'm very moved by. I think, as are you, I can hear it when you were speaking, that liberal Judaism really has put its emphasis on helping communities like ours, and on being there, and on making sure that we don't reinvent the wheel, right? That we don't need to reinvent the wheel, that there are ways that we can collaborate with each other. And I think, yeah, certainly for Peterborough Liberal and Norwich Liberal, I know that having LJ's resources has been the difference between being diverse and growing and not. So thanks so much for bringing perspective. Yes.
Yeah, one thing to add, I think that what we have tried to do is to give back where we can, and this is something I would encourage other communities to do. Those who attend the LJ Council meeting will know that I do bang on about the resource bank and how it could be far better utilized than it is, because it is incredibly useful to have the opportunity to see what other communities have done in different contexts. And when, we had tremendous support when there was the whole issue of GDPR, where we all needed to put together some data protection materials. I made sure that when we had completed ours, that I sent it to Shelley to put on the resource bank, because I feel, I don't want other communities to have to reinvent the wheel. If we've done something that we're very pleased with, that we're very happy with, and other people, and I don't think people would copy it, but it gives that baseline that points you in the direction of maybe we should be thinking about this, this, and this, which you can then build on. So you're not reinventing wheels, you're building on the experience and the expertise within other communities.
Absolutely. Sandra, I saw you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's easy to think that they're the big communities and they can help the small communities, and it's kind of like a top down, right? Like we have nothing, we need something from them, whoever they are, and of course the big communities have more resources. Generally they have rabbis and they have usual infrastructure that the rest of us just do not have. However, I think even just seeing who we are here today, and some of the things that Jana was saying, just because you are number wise smaller than a big community, it does not mean that the smaller ones don't have an awful lot to give. I mean, just what Owen has been I read your blog, by the way, just having what they do in Manchester and what you are highlighting around disability, I haven't seen that in any other in the big communities necessarily. Or actually a small community can still have as many kids and teenagers as a large community, and you still have the same needs. So we shouldn't think, oh, we're so small, it's so terrible and we always need help from the big ones. It's just not how it is. It's a much more of a partnership, and maybe sometimes collaboration is not always the right word, because there can be a sense of difference in size, and therefore what you can do, it's partnerships. And we as a community in Crouch End, we collaborate or partner with some of the large ones on specific things, but it doesn't mean we don't have anything less to give than the big ones. So Janet, thank you for pointing that out. I think
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mark, I think you wanted to add something.
Just reinforcing that point, I think we're classed as a medium-sized community. We, in total across Mosaic, we have 900 members. If we could on a regular basis get nearly half our members turning up for things we did, that would be extraordinary. If we get a quarter, I'm being generous, as a turnout, I think that's one of the big lessons that bigger communities need to learn from smaller communities, is how to create that level of intimacy and connection.
Absolutely. I can see people fizzing and wanting to continue this conversation, which is why I'm very excited. Can I ask, we'll wait until Jillian has spoken, because we haven't been introduced to our last panel member, and then we can really have a bit more of this discussion, which is absolutely the whole point of us all getting together from all of our different spots. And I think one of the silver linings of Zoom, absolutely, that none of us had to actually leave our residences to be together today. So I want to turn it over to Jillian Dawson, who was the chair for 6 or 7 years at the beginning of Wessex Liberal Jewish Community Start, and you're now celebrating your 10th anniversary. Is it this year?
Yeah. Yes, we are.
Yeah, so thanks so much for being here with us, Jillian. Tell us a bit about what you're up to.
Okay, well, first of all, I would just like to thank Janet for really saying a lot of the kind of history and collaboration with LJ that's so important for getting small communities off the ground. And our collaboration for the 10th year anniversary is really centered within our own community, in response partly to COVID-19. But the germ of our idea was before COVID-19. We wanted to celebrate 10 years of our members, and we have about 80 adults and 10 children, we wanted to celebrate the members themselves and increase the bonds between people by getting to know each other on a more intimate level than perhaps you would normally during a service or the kiddush afterwards. So we conceived this idea with the help of Pam Fox, who is one of our members and who is a historian and writer and social historian, to get members to interview each other for their life histories and put together a booklet. And the collaboration that is involved is to make sure that people who would like to be the interviewers and those who would like to be the interviewees, and sometimes obviously there's a crossover, we can put them in touch with each other and let them really get to know each other on a deeper level. So as soon as lockdown happened, this became a really important part of collaboration within the community. And people were using Zoom or using the telephone and really enjoying their get-together. In fact, I heard this morning that one person had said that he could hear his wife giggling over the Zoom as she was being interviewed. And we thought, well, that just shows that it's doing what we want it to do. It'll be so important as we come out the other end to make sure that our community holds together and that we collaborate with each other, and that we will get together a booklet that will actually preserve what we've done, and the bonds it will create will be used for the future. So it's quite a long-term view that the booklet will be used not only for our current members, but by our future members to see where we all came from. So that's an aspect of collaboration about what we're doing. And I thought that I would also talk about how we go about it, because the ideas are often the easy things to do, but it's to make sure that it goes through the whole process within the community so that it has council support, which is absolutely vital for something like this, that people are involved and kept informed, that we ask not only through our regular newsletter, which is done by one of our members of the community, but that also people are asked individually, because although it can be in the newsletter, you don't always get a response, but it creates the buzz and the vibe. I think I also wanted to say about our community, we do not actually have any paid people, which is quite probably common to a small community. Mm-hmm. I tend to refer to us as a DIY community. If we want anything done at all, we have to find people to do it or to volunteer. And that kind of collaboration actually is very engaging with the community. It's our community, because we all do things and we all put in what we can. And those people who do that find it a very satisfying type of community to be in. It doesn't mean to say we can be self-sufficient. This idea that was brought up before about being small and having, needs. The other aspect of community collaboration between communities was particularly came into focus over the COVID-19 shutdown. Our usual way of meeting is fortnightly for Shabbat morning service. And our Rabbi Renee Fertzel, comes to us once a month for Erev Shabbat and the following morning as well. And of course, with COVID-19, his other main community is Kingston. And at Kingston, they have the technology and the wherewithal to set up Facebook morning services and other things online. And through that connection, I have to say that Kingston just opened its arms and its doors to us in Wessex and invited us to participate in whatever we wanted to. And that feeling that has already been mentioned, that communities will support each other, has been just a wonderful and very spontaneous collaboration that came from Kingston's view of what we needed and that we could participate. So I think COVID-19, although it's kept us all apart, because of the collaborations that we have been able to do within and the setup that was already there that enabled it to happen, has been an opportunity that we've really taken.
Thank you so much, Jillian, especially for moving us over to speaking more specifically about COVID-19 and ways in which, as some of us have already spoke to a bit, that those collaborations and breaking down of walls actually have happened during these last couple months. I think it's really wonderful and heartwarming for us all to hear the ways in which we are still able to come together in a time when we're told that we can't physically come together. I think that's really key in all the communities that we work in. I saw that Rabbi Sandra wanted to share something, and I know that Owen, you had something you wanted to share right before Jillian spoke. Is that still relevant? Would you like to say that first before we move?
I really just wanted to quickly pick up on what Sandra had said about small communities. I mean, I really agree. There's so much strength in a small community that we shouldn't feel sort of inadequate or little us sort of thing, that we can really, really do so much more. Now, I'm absolutely overwhelmed by hearing the story from Peterborough. Absolutely brilliant. In fact, all the stories are turning out to be really inspirational. And it's really good that we're doing this. Okay?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is why we wanted us all to get together.
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
Did you have something, Sandra, you wanted to speak to?
Well, so I think, Gillian, you brought up a really interesting thing, which is, of course, you're right, collaboration is internal as well. I had it in my head because, you know, what the theme of this one, it has to be between other communities. Actually, the collaboration internally is as important as well. And particularly that bit about asking people to help, you know, so you call yourself a DIY, in Crouch End ourselves grassroots, you know, there's all these different ways of naming it. But I've always found that, or actually I've realized that asking people to help is a mitzvah. We get so worried and we start thinking like, oh, but Gillian has so much on her plate and Janet is always doing so much and Mark, he is so busy, right? So we never actually ask people. And most people will feel really not just flattered, but honored by being asked. And if they can't do it, they'll say no. But actually, it's much better to ask and get, because there is that bit of, the minute you help with something, you feel much more part of it. And you feel you're given, therefore you turn up. And as Mark was saying before, the issues around how many people come to services, well, the percentages of small communities that turn up to stuff, not just because they have less stuff on, but because people are engaged, because they've been asked by Gillian to do something, and therefore you feel that you're more, you know, you feel a sense of ownership. So actually, we shouldn't be shy about asking at all. We should just get out there and do it. Ask people, and then they can say no. But actually, but people will feel much more likely to come to services if they have built that relationship, because that's what asking does. It's the relationship building that is so vital, and what small communities generally have a much bigger abundance of than big communities.
Yes, and I mean, I'm so glad you picked up on that point, because that seems fundamental to me. And the other aspect is giving support to people while they're doing something. It's part of the collaboration. So I had a lovely email recently from our newsletter editor, who is obviously very technologically capable, which is why he was asked if he would do that for us. But he sent a lovely email to me and one of and our synagogue secretary saying, thank you for all the support you give me for doing it, because you can't just leave someone saying, oh good, that's their job. You do have to make sure they've got the support to do the job, and that's part of the internal collaboration.
Absolutely. Mark, you wanted to
jump in? I can add to that. One of the very interesting things about the Mosaic experience as we came together was Mosaic Masorti, Hachen Masorti as was a 100-ish member community. And there was a lot of concern at the beginning about how could they be an equal partner alongside, for example, the 600-member Mosaic Reform community. And what we actually found, it was genuinely a partnership of equals, because that community brought just as much to the party, and what they've contributed, and feel just as much a part of Mosaic, because that factor that we've just been talking about, that the level of engagement in the smaller communities is so much greater. And there was a huge learning for Mosaic Reform in particular about how to re-engage with the community that came out from that. And as you say, on the other side of that, the thing that Mosaic Reform could bring was some of that, for want of a better word, infrastructure, to be able to enable then the community to move forward so much more easily because of having that behind us. And so very much I'd reinforce what everybody else is saying, that this is about recognising everybody has huge contributions to make, and let's not assume that the scale means anything other than just how many people happen to be around.
Yeah, Janet.
We've spoken about collaboration within a community and collaboration between communities, but I think there is one area that is can be very helpful for communities in raising a local profile, and that is in collaboration on an interfaith basis. We've always contributed and participated in the Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration events, it is a big civic event in Peterborough. But this year, because of the 75th anniversary of Bergen-Belsen, we, in conjunction with the local Catholic community, hosted a concert in the evening of the day. We had the civic ceremony during the day, and then in the evening, we had a concert. We invited the Kollechad choir from Cambridge and the Catholic school choir, who did various aspects of various different types of religious music. We also had Danny Rich very kindly came along and was involved in the event as well. And what that did, we had, I think, over 130 people at this concert. There were some people who'd attended for whom it was, it reminded them there was a Jewish community in Peterborough for a start. We also raised funds for the Holocaust Memorial, the National Holocaust Centre in Newark. And similarly, in 3 years ago, we were asked if we would help the Stamford Town Council. Stamford's about 15 miles away from Peterborough. We were invited to help them put together their first Holocaust Memorial Day commemoration service. That's now an annual event, and again, we have met people who wanted to engage with the Jewish community that they didn't know was there prior to that. So that's been very, very useful.
I think Leah's stuck again. Mark, why don't you continue?
Owen, do you want to go?
I think there's can anybody hear me right now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, all right, I think we've got a lag. I think Leah is stuck. But Owen, do you want to start and then Mark afterwards?
Yeah, could I just say a quick word about taking on what Janet was talking about, collaborating with the wider community? I think that's a really important point, because I'm a member of the Jewish Labour Movement Northwest, and I'm actually the LGBT officer. And what I'm trying to do is arrange for the group to march in Pride in Manchester in August, and to bring in the shul, because I think to have a visible Jewish presence on the Pride March would be really, really important. And, that's something that I really want to do.
No, it's a great thing to bring in, that the way collaboration works is that it's between faith communities, it's within our own community, it's across Jewish communities, it's across different marginalized communities, of which the Jewish community
absolutely,
and
yes,
it's all of those bits.
Yes.
I think Mark wanted to say something before.
Well, I was going to add to that. I'm not sure, it's one of those interesting things about when you talk to people, you never know what opportunities are going to come out of that. So at the moment, I'm very aware, we are in the borough of Harrow and Brent, which was kind of ground zero in the UK for COVID. And we were very, very hard hit in the early days with the number of illnesses and unfortunate deaths. And as much as we were supported through the movements, but also the conversations we have had with other faith communities have been really helpful through that process, I think, just because of being able to share with one of the local mosques what they were going through, being able to share ideas that were very specifically local. And although they were grounded in a faith response, reality that wasn't necessarily a specifically Jewish faith response to the situation. So as I say, you never know. And having those contacts, if we hadn't had those relationships, those conversations wouldn't have been happening. So.
Absolutely. Sandra, I saw, and then Jillian, and then unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up. This has been wonderful, but we're coming to the end. Yeah, Sandra.
So I just wanted to reflect on, it can feel very much we are helping others, so to speak, in our collaboration, and what do we get out of it ourselves. So as part of the multi-faith network, which I think most communities are part of, they are incredible. Before COVID, they weren't always so useful, I have to say. But because we are now, it's a very nice way of putting it, probably, trying to be diplomatic. But actually, because we're now in the same scenario as everybody else, no matter, it's not about the religion, it's about where the people are at. Actually, we've had the most incredible, every week, I meet up with all the local other faith groups, as well as on those calls are the council and the head of police in our area and the head of the local hospital, which, by the way, is also one of the, unfortunately, the hospital with the most amounts of COVID deaths, which is very difficult. We've had the head of nursing is always on the call. So so we are all hearing the same message, and it's great to share across. We've just done a video because of the fears around of unlocking lockdown, and it is called Pray Safe, Save a Life. And so we made these little videos that's been put together by the council and is now being streamed everywhere, because some of the faith communities are having more difficulties getting their members to not come and to not do stuff because of the rules in their religion of how you pray together or do stuff together. So that's one where the faith collaboration has been really, really great. But the other one that came as a big surprise is that we joined Citizens UK, which some of the communities in LJ have been are part of or been exposed to. And as we all know, Citizens does justice, right? Which is long-term, slow, and change will happen, but you need an awful lot of patience for it. And of course, what we discovered is what people need right now is food. So we're in the borough of Haringey, which has one of the biggest discrepancies from east to west in life expectancy and in socioeconomic circumstances. It's huge. It's more than 10 years, I think. It's terrible. And we, because of the collaboration we already had through Citizens, we wanted to help, right? People desperately want to help in this pandemic. Most of us are stuck at home and are actually okay. We're actually okay. Some are bored, some are working too much, some are working too little, but everybody wants to help. Even the doctors, by the way, who are on non-stop frontline work, still wanted to help. So we discovered that one of the schools, the school meal voucher system wasn't really working in the early days, and actually it only really got going last week, I think. And the families didn't have any food at all. And so we've been donating food every week, quite a lot of it, to this school. Now, that's not because we're so wonderful and great that I'm mentioning. It's not about us, right? What is interesting is how it feeds back that we do something for others, right? It is great for us, not because it makes us feel high and mighty or anything like that, but because in helping others, something changes internally in the community. And so we shouldn't, I think, fear pouring some of our energies outside of the community as well, because actually the benefit coming back is incredible. And it starts these conversations internally about who we are, what matters, what does it mean to give charity, why do I feel like I need to have a thank you when I really don't, all these other things. And so the giving to others, so to speak, the partnership with others is never a one way. And even in the interfaith context, like the extreme interfaith context right now, actually brings an awful lot to us. Like, it really helps my community to help others.
Amazing. Thank you. Gillian.
Yes, I'll pick up on that theme on social action and interfaith collaboration for just mentioning something in Wessex that's happened since 2016. It wasn't official through official channels, but several members of our community joined in, and so did a couple of the liberal Jewish rabbis, people from the Christian community and the Quakers, and all sorts of other people, whether or not affiliated, to buy a house for refugees coming to this country. I mean, we haven't forgotten the refugee crisis, but we realized that the most difficulty was housing. And believe it or not, we got together 42 people, and they all contributed. I think we raised £250,000, which is enough to buy a small terraced house in Bournemouth, and a local charity who works with refugees brought us in a refugee family and takes care of them. And now that's a success story. The husband actually now has enough English to have a job. And it's a job that during COVID-19 has actually continued. So that kind of social involvement is very much our tikkun olam and how we collaborate in that way.
Thank you. I'm sorry we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank you all so much for being part of this. And I knew that your stories of collaboration would exceed expectations, would exceed imaginings, and I'm not actually surprised that that has been the case. Just the little bits of little things that we've touched on and the successes of each of our communities and the communities that we're largely a part of is really, I think, an inspiration to hear. And to that end, there's a lot of expertise in this virtual room right now. So we're going to share with people who have come to view this some links, I think, that will be available with this session, how to get in touch with us. We're going to share, Owen, your drasha, your blog on accessibility, and if there are any other links that any of you want to share with us, and we can put that in the session blurb. There's going to be a way to do that, I think, and our contact details. And I just wanted to end by reflecting a bit together on the fact that this time of COVID and pandemic has reminded us all that we are intimately vulnerable to the world's shared struggles. And I use that phrase on purpose. I think intimate and vulnerable, that we are vulnerable in a way that I think has been frightening, but that intimacy that we have created with others within our community and without, as each of you have resonated with and really brought to the surface, has meant that we've been able to actually build together in this time because we created those relationships and are deepening them. And I think that is the heart of the community work that we do in progressive Jewish life and in other community work. And I wanted to thank you all for putting a highlight on that, and to wish everyone a wonderful biennial and rest of this weekend. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
What an incredibly inspiring session this morning. In fact, 2 sessions this morning. If you missed the first one, which actually Rafe, who sat next to me on screen, was leading on as well with rabbis Ellie Tikva and Janet Burden around collaboration through prayer in community. You can go back and watch that later on. But for now, we have a few moments break where if you just want to stay where you are, we will have some more inspiring stories from our podcast, Lily's Legacy. But in the meantime, you might also need to go and get yourself ready, get your equipment ready to come and pray with us at 11 a.m. this morning for our Shabbat morning service for this biennial weekend.
I remember well, was elderly, and when I remember him best was because the synagogue had been bombed during the war, we couldn't use it for the high holy days, so we used to go to the Friends Meeting House in Euston Road, and I always used to join my father again in the afternoons of Yom Kippur, and I couldn't wait for the service to end. Dr. Mattock used to always take the final blessing. He was very old-fashioned. He always raised his hands and said, "And peace be upon you."
From about 1942, we left the Belsize Square and my father joined the Liberal Jewish Synagogue in St. John's Wood, which was then the senior rabbi was Israel Mattock, a very brilliant man. I suppose today his Judaism would not be accepted by the establishment, but he was a very, very brilliant speaker and very moving and very lovely personality. And perhaps a bit of a showman, because I always remember how when he did the final blessing, he lifted up the talus high up. Perhaps you could say today he was a showman, but it was very successful.
I met Claude Montefiore. I was quite close to Leslie Edgar. I knew Mattock, who wasn't easily approachable, but we knew each other. And I was working my way up through the youth movement.
We had a very good rabbi called Rabbi Hooker, who really put us on the map. And then later on, we had a rabbi called Zucker, who came from America, who really made the connection with the other communities and was very much accepted, not only by our community, but by the whole Jewish community of Birmingham.
Well, we had fairly early on, Alan Mann was appointed as our rabbi. He was the third rabbi at the LGS at the time. Then we had a series of student rabbis, and also David Goldstein, who was also an old boy of my school. He was a few years older than me. Keep coming across these Jews everywhere that went to my school. He was with us just up until we started buying the building. We had several student rabbis. There was Kenneth Cohen, who was American. He became the chief rabbi of Wales, I believe. He was the only one there afterwards. The best one was Danny Gottlieb, who was our rabbi when we were building the shul. And he was so popular, the LPS allowed him to stay another year, because officially only supposed to be 1 year. The student rabbi was only assigned to congregations for a year, but he was with us for at least 2.
I'm here. I'm one of the wardens of Brighton and Hove Progressive Synagogue, look after on a Shabbat morning service. And I think my first ever lesson in how to do wardening was when I was 5 years old, when somebody who was very much involved with the liberal movement, Joe Swinburne,
was the warden at North London Progressive Synagogue and had to tell me off for misbehaving during the service. At that time in liberal Judaism, you had some people that would have been very much influenced by Lily Montagu. We had a rabbi called, or he was a reverend in those days, and he was Herbert Richer, a very influential rabbi at that time in the movement. We also had the influence of Germany, because at that time in the synagogue didn't only have a rabbi, it had cantor. Music was very important, and it had an organ. And we had this cantor, who was only for a few years because he then retired, who was Lewandowski. And it must have been related to, the Lewandowskis that produced a lot of the music we have in our services. And I remember as a child, I always sometimes used to say to you, maybe one day you would like to become a husband, because I used to like to pretend I was in those days, but no, it wasn't the case.
The minister was Reverend Herbert Richer. In those days, liberals called all their ministers reverends. Eventually, they became rabbis. Herbert Richer was really a dynamic person. I suppose I could call North London my alma mater synagogue, because all I learned was really from there. It was a strong Zionist synagogue, stemming from when Maurice Perlsweek, the founder minister, was there. Unlike the rest of liberal Judaism, he was very pro-Israel and or the founding of the State of Israel. That continued right way through the life of North London. They arranged trips to Israel, ambulances for Magen David Adom, and so many other things. But the community itself was very dynamic. They were a wonderful bunch of people. In the late 60s, the union had the remarkable foresight to employ Rabbi Sidney Brichto from America. And Sidney was a most dynamic person. He really was, and he could easily persuade the birds from the trees. He was really a dynamic man to have in control of the whole setup, and it brought the movement back to life a bit, because it was getting a bit stale in its ways. In around about 1975, I think, in the push to try and get more Jews to become involved in progressive Judaism, Sidney approached myself, Harold Miller and Joe Swinburne, and asked if we would be willing to set up a branch of North London in Ilford, because Ilford at that time had the largest Jewish community in Europe. And I pointed out to him that there was already a liberal shul in South Woodford. There was one Reform shul, and also 4 Orthodox synagogues. But I said, nonetheless, for that, I still thought there was room for us.
As my life is always very much influenced by liberal Judaism, I was bar mitzvahed at North London Progressive Synagogue by Sidney Brichter, who was a very important member of the of liberal Judaism. He was executive director, and at that time was taking the services at North London Progressive Synagogue. And he wasn't a particularly tall person. I was always been tall. And he always gave a blessing onto the bar mitzvah boy. And on this occasion, he had to comment that he had to look up to the bar mitzvah boy rather than actually look down to the person.
I remember we had Rabbi Rayner, who was the chief rabbi at the time. And one of my memories is that he took us away to Oxford, I think, or Cambridge. And we went to a theological college, and we were like students there. So we each had our own room, and it was an amazing experience, really. I don't think I appreciated it at all at the time, but that was the sort of teaching for the confirmation. But I know that liberal Judaism was criticized then for the confirmation process, that it made it too much like the Christian confirmation. And more recently, bat mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs have come
back into fashion, I suppose. And both of my daughters were bat mitzvahed.
There's a lot of debate among progressive Jews, not just liberal Jews, about how far you change prayers in order to say what you believe and how far you reinterpret. And I can see both views, but I think I'm still where John Rayner was, which is that, you know, you should change things you don't believe you can say. He was full of integrity, so, you know, he was never afraid to speak out, for example, on Israel and Palestine. He was very clear about what progressive Jewish values were. I know at our ordination service, there were certain prayers he said he wouldn't lead because he felt in all sincerity he couldn't say them. And that always stuck with me, having that sort of courage to be really clear what you believe and what you're willing to say. I don't remember the exact prayer, but I know that when we were ordained, our prayers were a mixture of reform and liberal, and I suspect it was something related to redemption or something. I'm not sure. And at the same time, you know, he was an innovator and he reintroduced traditions to liberal Judaism. So he again made Judaism both more radical and more traditional. So he introduced a Tikkun Shavuot for the night of Shavuot, which go on all night. And one of my great Jewish experiences in my 20s was going to that at the Liberal Jewish Synagogue and learning for a whole night with him. And like so many great teachers, yeah, it was who he was really, and it's sometimes just hard to say exactly. You can name some things, and I have, but they're also towering figures. And from what my dad and from what John said about Lily Montague, I think she was the same, that she just had this sort of aura about her.
Both sets of parents, members of the United Synagogue, wouldn't hear of having me married in a liberal synagogue. So I consulted John Rayner, whom I knew very well, Rabbi John Rayner, as to what to do, because I didn't want to have an enormous row. He advised me it was okay to get married at Brixton. I got married at the Brixton United Synagogue. Although we were living in Tooting and there was Streatham United Synagogue, my father, for some reason or other, wanted it to be at Brixton. So I'm afraid I've got a United Synagogue ketubah. When John said, "Do it, don't, you know, it's not the time to fall out with your parents," and it was both sets of parents. So I did it. We always said one day we'll have a liberal wedding, but we never got round to it. He was a student when I first knew him, but then his first appointment was at South London, where I was a member. John was a mixture of very formal and serious, and the other side of him was telling jokes, just being a normal human being. I think many people only saw John's serious side, and of course, you know, very academic, very knowledgeable indeed. I've seen him standing on his head. Well, I think he was a very important figure in liberal Judaism. He was sort of seen, I think, in a way, although he didn't have that title, as a senior rabbi in liberal Judaism. People would listen to John and regard him as the expert, and at the same time, perhaps a little unapproachable, maybe, because he was so much looked up at, I suppose. On the other hand, he was a very warm and very, very caring person. I think he certainly was seen as someone who spoke for liberal Judaism.
We got a phone call from Rosita Rosenberg, who was then administrative secretary of what was the ULPS. She said, "Would you be interested, Brenda, in helping start a synagogue locally?"
גדלו מעשיך היה, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מה 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 גדלו מעשיך היה, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך.
So Shabbat Shalom and a huge welcome to the whole of the liberal Jewish family. The whole of liberal Judaism is gathered here. We didn't know if we could do it, and here we are, biennial at home and our Shabbat morning service. I welcome you all with a hearty Shabbat Shalom from Rachel Benjamin, from Igor Zinkov and myself as we lead each other in prayer this morning. This feels an uplifting moment for us as a congregation. All of you representing all your different communities, we hope we'll see the images of your bima or of your logo behind us so that each one of you feels that we are praying with you in all the different congregations of liberal Judaism. There is much to celebrate in this wide family of ours. We have managed to include many musicians within liberal Judaism as well, so we really hope that this service will honor, pay tribute to all those who are involved in liberal Judaism, including 3 of our precious national officers. I found these words from Lily Montague, one of our founders, who wrote this in the 1950s, but it couldn't feel more apt for us today as we begin our Shabbat morning service. She wrote, "There is no reason why we should be unhappy about the future, since the best people will always look for the best in life and get together in search of it." May that be our blessing and intention this Shabbat morning.
משכנותיך ישראל, מה טובו אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, מה טובו אוהליך משכנותיך
So as well as gathering together as all our different congregation, this morning is also an opportunity for us to highlight and use the draft Siddur that Rabbi Leah Molstein and Rabbi Eli Tikvasera have worked so extraordinarily hard on these past months and even turning into years. We have chosen what we feel is a beautiful service to try out for all of us. The layout, I think you'll all agree, is improved, and we'll be sharing the liturgy throughout the service, so you don't need to have your own. We're on page 3 as we're at the beginning of the Shabbat morning service with the beautiful prayer of Eloheinu Shama, the prayer that we offer every morning with a gratitude that our soul is back in our body and we are alive and well. Eloheinu Shama shenatata bi tohorahi, ata varata, ata yatsata, ata nafachta bi, vata meshamra bekirbi, vata artid litla mimeni lechaye olam, kol zman shenashama bekirbi, moda ani lefanecha, Adonai Elohei ve'Elohei dorot, ribon kol hamaasim, Adon kol hanishmaot, Baruch ata Adonai asher biyado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar ish. So one of the highlights of this draft Siddur for us, for liberal Judaism of this moment, is to try out feminized Hebrew that felt daunting for many of us. Here is an alternative rendition of our morning blessings, the blessings we say first thing in the morning to offer gratitude, appreciation for what is going well in our life, where we come from, where we are going. And here, do follow with me on page 4 with the feminized Hebrew. Brucha at Shechina, Makor Chayenu, She'asitinu, Kidmut Eloah. Brucha at Shechina, Makor Chayenu, She'asitinu, Bet Yaakov, Leah, V'Rachel, Bilcha, V'Zilpa. Brucha at Shechina, Makor Chayenu, Zokefet, Kufufot. Brucha at Shechina, Makor Chayenu, Matira Asurot. Brucha at Shechina, Makor Chayenu, Malbisha Arumot. Brucha at Shechina, Makor Chayenu, Hamchina Mitzadenu, Ale Adama. Nothing could bring us more honor than Leah and Eli having included words from Rabbi John Rayner, Zichrono Livracha, and these words make so much meaning to all our Shabbat services, all our liturgy. In every place where I cause my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. Bless, O God, those who are assembled here in your name. Grant that we may all draw from this service a renewed consciousness of your presence, a deeper loyalty to our faith, and a stronger resolve to order our lives in harmony with your will. Join me at home with your mute button on. Blessed be the one whose word gives being to the world. Blessed be the origin of every beginning. Blessed be the word which is deed, the will which is fulfillment. Blessed be the compassion which embraces the world and all beings. Blessed be the living spirit which endures and prevails. Blessed be the one whose name brings rescue and redemption. Our songs of praise acclaim your greatness and your wonder, unifying life force of all worlds. Blessed are you, eternal flow of being, calling forth our psalms of praise.
It is custom to stand up before certain prayers in Judaism. These prayers include Baruch Hu, Shema, Amidah, and others. Whether it is your custom to stand in your synagogue for those prayers or to remain seated, I invite you to do so now, because apart from an additional lockdown meaning of standing up in front of a screen, there is also a meaning of solidarity. You will stand and you will know that hundreds of liberal Jews across the world will do the same with you. I will remain seated with those who normally sit. ישתבח שמך לעד מקור חיינו, רוח חזקה וקדושה בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נא שכינה מקור חיינו וחיי דורותינו, שירה ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם. ברוכה תהיה רוח מלאת תשפחות, הם ההודעות, הן הנפלאות, המחזרת שירי זמרה, שכינה בתוכנו, חייך עולמים.
Blessed are you, infinite power that we are, majesty of the universe, forming light and creating darkness, making harmony and creating chaos. You, O infinite, do all this. You fill and embrace all things, guiding your universe as it folds and evolves, turning planets, suns, and galaxies in their celestial dance, moving the atoms, molecules, and cells that are our very being. In your compassion, you let the sun shine upon the earth and on all creatures that live here. In your goodness, you renew day after day the work of creation. How many, how varied are your works, O Eternal, all of them fashioned in wisdom. The earth is full of your riches. Ahava Rabbah Ahavatnu, how greatly we feel your love, eternal God, and how tenderly your compassion surrounds us, our source and our strength. Generations of our people trusted in you, for you taught them the laws of life. Continue to teach us, graciously strengthening our will to discern wisdom and become enlightened. May we hear you as we learn and teach, keep and act upon the words of your Torah. Let our eyes see by the light of your teaching. Guide us to fulfill your mitzvot. In integrity of heart, let us feel love and awe for your name, for you have called upon us to declare your unity with love. Brucha at Yah, habocheret be'ama Yisrael be'ahava. We bless you, source of life and love, for calling your people Israel. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai, Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam, Leolam. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai, Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam, Leolam. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai, Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam, Leolam.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך, בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Truth is not the best loved of virtues, and yet it is one of the noblest, as it is perhaps the hardest of them all. It needs courage and resolution and strength of will. It must be loved for its own sake, or it will not be practiced. מי כמוך, האלי
Tehilot,
Oseh,
Feleh,
Norah, Tehilot, Oseh, Feleh.
שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Tzur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Go'aleinu Adonai Tzebaot Shemo, Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael.
We've come to the next part of the service, which is Amidah, and I invite you to stand or remain seated, whatever your custom is. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi yagid zeilatecha. Eternal God, open up my lips that my mouth shall declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim ve'Koneh Hakol, Zocher Chazdei Avot ve'Imahot, U'mevii Geula לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומשיר ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. את גיבורה לעולם חוויה, מחיה מתים את רבה להושיע. משיבה מרוח ומרידה הגשם, מזריחה השמש ומרידה טל. מכלכלת חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומכת נופלים ורופאה חולים, ומתירה אסורים, ומקיימת אמונתה לשני העפר. מי כמוך בעלת גבורות, ומי דומה לך, גבורה ממיתה ומחיה, ומצמיחה ישועה, ונאמרת את להחיות מתים. ברוכת חוויה מחיה המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, ככתוב על יד נביאך. קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ. כבודו, כבודו מלא עולם, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך, כי מחכים אנחנו לך. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור. הללויה, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך. שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך. שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. מקדשי שבי, מקדשי שבי, כולם ישמחו ויתענגו, ישמחו ויתענגו מטובך. ישמחו במלכותך. שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך. שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג. חמדת ימים אותו קראת, חמדת ימים אותו קראת. זכר למעשה בראשית, זכר למעשה בראשית. ישמחו במלכותך. שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, ישמחו במלכותך. שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג.
Our God and God of our ancestors, may our rest on this day be pleasing in your sight. Sanctify us by your commandments and make us loyal to your teaching. Satisfy us with your goodness and gladden us with your salvation, and purify our hearts that we may serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Eternal One, let the holiness of your Sabbath enter our hearts, and may all Israel who hallow your name be exalted by its peace. Blessed are you, O God, for the holiness of the Sabbath. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל, ותפילתנו באהבה תקבל, ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני, שעודך לבדך ביראה נעבוד. We give thanks that you, Eternal One, are our God, as you were the God of our ancestors. You are the rock of our life, the power that shields us in every age. We thank and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your keeping, for the signs of your presence we encounter every day, and for your wondrous gifts at all times, morning, noon, and night. Blessed are you, O God, source of goodness, to whom our thanks are due.
שים שלום, טובה וברכה. שים שלום, טובה וברכה. שים שלום, חן וחסד ורחמים. חן וחסד ורחמים, ורחמים. שים שלום. Shalom Tova Uvracha Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Aleinu Ve'al Kol Israel Aleinu Ve'al Kol Israel Amecha Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha.
Blessed are you, eternal one, our God, the source of peace. Let's take a few moments for silent prayer and personal reflection and meditation.
To Kriyat Torah, the Torah service, you can see by the fantastic blue square that Leah and Ellie have used throughout the Siddur to help us navigate ourselves and find ourselves within the structure of the morning service. As this whole service has been, it has been a celebration of collaboration of rabbis, of lay leaders, of musicians, and we go into the Torah service with just the same intent.
We are the people of the Word, and the breath of the Word fills our minds with light. We are the people of the Word, and the breath of life sings through us playing on the pipes of our bones and the strings of our sinew. An ancient song carved in the Laurentian granite, and new as a spring azure butterfly, just drying her wings in a moment's splash of sun. We must live the word and make it real. We are the people of the book, and the letters march busy as ants, carrying the work of the ages through our minds. We are the people of the book. Through fire and mud and dust, we have borne our scrolls tenderly as a baby swaddled in a blanket, traveling with our words sewn in our clothes and carried on our backs. Let us take up the scroll of Torah and dance with it and touch it and read it out. For the mind touches the word and makes it light. So does light enter us, and we shine.
So, as we turn towards our Torah reading, I wanted to share with you all, Raphael, my youngest son, and I visited Rome last autumn. Clearly, such memories of travel feel a lifetime ago. We cycled part of the Appian Way. It was idyllic, as you can imagine, but the most extraordinary sight for us was a stone set at the edge of the Appian cobbled path outside an old villa, engraved with the names Baruch, Zabda, Valerian, Akiva. Our guide, not knowing who we were, enthusiastically told us the name was Jewish, attached to the slaveholder's name. As a former slave so keen to be noted, Baruch, Zabda, Akiva chose to be seen, counted, and noted by paying for this stone and engraving his name on it before he died. Centuries later, Raphael and I saw it and noted. I think of this stone now and have been thinking about it all week as we begin Bamidbar, the fourth book of Torah, the book of Numbers, opening with the census of the people. The taking of the census is potentially dull, and when we saw it coincided with Biennial Shabbat, we wondered. It's just a list of names, but on the other hand, it isn't. Take a census, Su'u et Rosh, it opens. The words open, lift up the head of the whole Israelite community. The word Su'u, the root, is only used when the intention is to indicate greatness. That is, holding high one's head, as Nachmanides commented on this second verse. But the census demonstrates what we all know only too well in our congregations in 2020, that each individual makes up a community. And only by knowing the name and where each individual has come from and where they are choosing to go, do we become a real congregation. Just like that slave in Rome who wanted his name to be noticed, so we are congregations of names, and liberal Judaism is an even larger congregation of all of our names. Bamidbar, rather like the phone book, as Rabbi Louis Jacob Zichrono Livracha taught us as rabbinic students at Leobeck College, the phone book can be read as a dull list of names, each Brown, Smith, or Cohen seeming just the same as the other. But actually, we know the individuality that is included in every name. The Italian commentator Sforno anticipated him by saying, at that time, every one of that generation was designated by their name, which indicated and reflected stature and character. And how we know that to be true for us now. We have survived over 100 years from our founders' hope at the beginning of the 20th century. And through these past extraordinary weeks, we've seen that nearly 900 of us are gathering this weekend, choosing to be counted as this community, being seen and being part of liberal Judaism. Liberal Judaism has grown and developed by recognizing all who count themselves as being part of this congregation. We've utterly expanded who counts from biblical times to now. Each individual we know ameliorates our movement, and we are greater together than just the sum of our parts. We know that showing up for each other and our values is the ultimate way of being counted. Just showing up for each other and to be part of our communities. I hope that as the Torah is read this morning, you might see a glimpse of the photo of your congregation, of your bima, of your ark, even of your Torah scroll, of a reminder of who you are and who you have chosen to be counted amongst as we gather here this morning for Torah. So I am delighted to be able to call up our acting chair of Liberal Judaism, Ruth Seeger. Ta'amod, Ruti, Bat Eric, V'Julie, Levarech et HaTorah.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavarach. Baruch Adonai Hamavarach ve'alam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten ha'Torah.
Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe במדבר סיני באוהל מועד באחד לחודש השני בשנה השנית לצאתם מארץ מצרים לאמור שאו את ראש כל עדת בני ישראל למשפחותם לבית אבותם במספר שמות כל זכר לגולגלותם מבין 20 שנה ומעלה כל יוצאי צבא בישראל תפקדו אותם לצבאותם אתה ואהרון ואיתכם יהיו איש איש למטה איש ראש לבית אבותיו הוא. And the Eternal One spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting, on the first day of the second month, in the second year of their going out from the land of Egypt, saying, Take a census of the whole Israelite community by the clans of its ancestral houses, listing the names, every male, head by head. From the age of 20 years up, all those in Israel who are able to bear arms, you and Aaron shall record them by their groups. And with you, let there be a man from each tribe, each one the head of his ancestral house. Well, the Torah then continues with a list of the 12 men, one from each tribe, who are to assist Moses and Aaron with the census. But we continue after that in our reading from verse 16. Eile keru'ei ha'edah, nesi'ei matot avotam, Rashi alfei Yisrael hem. Vayikach Moshe va'Aharon et ha'anashim ha'ele asher nikvu b'shemot ve'et kol ha'edah hikhilu be'echad lachodesh hasheni ve'yityaldu al mishpachotam leveit avotam b'mispar shemot מבין 20 שנה ומעלה לגולגלותם, כאשר ציווה אדוני את משה. ויפקדם במדבר Sinai. These are the elected of the community, the chieftains of their ancestral tribes. They are the heads of the contingents of Israel. So Moses and Aaron took these men who had been designated by name, and on the first day of the second month, they gathered together the whole community who were registered by the clans of their ancestral houses, the names of those aged 20 years and over being listed head by head. As the eternal God had commanded Moses, so he recorded them in the wilderness of Sinai.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Now we turn to the Haftarah, taken from the prophet Hosea, and we can see the echo with the census and the counting as Israel is described, the people of Israel, as the sand of the sea, numerous to be counted, and ultimately will become one people, and the people of God, Ami, is the promise from God, my people. I turn now to the Vice Chair of Liberal Judaism, Karen Newman, for her reading of Haftarah.
Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to begin by thanking the rabbinic team, in particular Rabbi Rebecca Burke, for indulging my aversion to modern biblical translations. Thank you, Rebecca. Blessed are you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You inspired faithful prophets and took pleasure in the words they spoke in truth. Blessed are you, Eternal One, Giver of Torah, through your servant Moses, your people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that instead of that which was said to them, ye are not my people, it shall be said to them, ye are the children of the living God. And the children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together, and they shall appoint themselves one head, and shall go up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. Say ye unto your brethren, Ami, my people, and to your sisters, Ruhamah, that hath obtained compassion. And it shall be at that day, saith the Eternal One, that thou shalt call me Ishi, my husband, and shalt call me no more Baali, my master. For I will take away the names of the Baalim out of her mouth, and they shall no more be mentioned by their name. And in that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of heaven, and with the creeping things of the ground, and I will break the bow and the sword and the battle out of the land, and I will make them to lie down safely. And I will betroth thee unto me forever. Yea, I will betroth thee unto me in righteousness, and in justice, and in loving kindness, and in compassion. And I will betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and thou shalt know the Eternal One. And it shall come to pass in that day, I will respond, saith the Eternal One. I will respond to the heavens, and they shall respond to the earth. And the earth shall respond to the corn, and the wine, and the oil. And they shall respond to Jezreel, whom God soweth. And I will sow her unto me in the land, and I will have compassion upon her that hath not obtained compassion. And I will say to them that were not my people, thou art my people. And they shall say, thou art my God. Blessed are you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You have been our source of strength and righteousness throughout the ages, the faithful God whose word is deed, whose every word is true and just. For the Torah, for the divine service, for the prophets, and for this Sabbath day, which you, Eternal One our God, have given us for holiness and rest, for honor and beauty. For all these we offer thanks. May your name be blessed by all the living forever. Baruch atah Adonai, Makadesh HaShabbat. Blessed are you, Eternal One. You make the Sabbath holy.
And now we honour our third national officer, Robin Moss, Officer for Strategy for Liberal Judaism, who will lead us in the community blessings.
Eternal God, whose presence fills the universe, we ask your blessing for our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth, and all the royal family, for those who govern our country, and for all who influence the quality of its national life. Make them conscious of their responsibility and teach them to exercise it in accordance with your will, and in the interests of, in particular, the vulnerable, the poor, and the marginal. May we all help to fashion in this country a society that excels in freedom and justice, tolerance and compassion, equality and diversity, so that it may be a force for righteousness and peace in the life of humanity. And let us say, Amen. Eternal God, as you blessed our ancestors in generations past, bless now this congregation, its leaders and its members, and all who enter this virtual synagogue to meet, to study, and to pray. Comfort the sorrowing hearts among us and heal those in anxiety or pain. We pray that we may all find here community and friendship, renewal of purpose and hope, a deeper understanding of our heritage, and a sense of your abiding presence. Bless all congregations of the House of Israel throughout the world. Let those who live under oppressive rule soon be free, and may we all unite to witness to your truth and do your will. As the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians continues to rage decade after decade, to pray for peace seems a hopeless and naive folly. And yet, today, it is more urgent than ever that a just and peaceful resolution is achieved that acknowledges the needs of both peoples for sovereignty and security. And so we pray, El Maleh Rachamim, God full of compassion, who heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds, we ask you to show all your children the way of love and compassion, so that hatred ceases to scar their lives. Ein HaChaim, source of life, we call upon you to send your abundant blessings into every home, Israeli and Palestinian, so that new hope may overcome old fears. Adonai Tzaddik, righteous one, who exhorts us to pursue justice, we fervently pray that a spirit of righteousness may prevail, so that both peoples find the courage to reach a just settlement of their differences. Oseh Shalom, maker of peace, who teaches us to be seekers of peace, we entreat you now to spread your tabernacle of Shalom Salam over all the inhabitants of your land, and to support the peacemakers among both peoples in their efforts to walk the path of reconciliation, so that a just peace may reign supreme at last, bimherab me beyamenu, speedily in our day, and let us say, Amen. And now a special prayer during this coronavirus crisis. Out of our distress we call to the Eternal One. O God, hear our plea and be attentive to our prayers. Heal those who are suffering from the virus. May they find renewed strength and breath to return to health in the days and weeks ahead. We pray for the families of those who have lost loved ones. Open our hearts to your compassion, O God, so that without the ability to embrace and meet, we can bring comfort to mourners with our words or in our silence, binding up the wounds of those who are broken-hearted and alone in their grief. We pray for all those working on the front line of the NHS, those who are keeping essential services in operation, and give thanks for their sacrifice that takes them away from their families and exposes them to the threat of danger and sickness. Help us, O God, to find your spirit within us, your steadfast love and compassion. Inspire us to use our time well, to learn to be contented, to give what we can give to others, and with gracious acceptance to be recipients of the kindness of others. May your blessing rest on us now and always, and let us say, Amen.
And as we prepare to finish the Kriyat Torah, the Torah service, and remind ourselves the gift of Torah for all of us liberal Jews, may I just remind you all that as we move out of the service towards the end of the service, Being the large congregation we are this morning, we were not able to read all the yard sites that fall in the different communities across liberal Judaism. But wherever you're watching, do share names of those you are remembering, so we can still feel ourselves to be part of a congregation this morning. Ki lecha tov natati lachem, torati al ta'azovu.
עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש ימינו כקדם.
Rabbi Renee Fertzel, who has led the whole biennial committee when we were destined to gather together in real time and now virtually, Renee preaches this morning.
Shabbat Shalom to you all. I know that you're sitting in your home and you're watching to this streaming of Dvar Torah for the Shabbat morning. So let's start to connect with some music. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת אחים גם יחד. I know we are not sitting together, but in spirit we are. What a strange and unsettling experience it is to sit in the comfort of our homes, and yet to know that through the screen that stands before us, we are able to connect to hundreds of people around the country and beyond its borders. I'm here in my home office, talking to my computer, which is a strange experience. And I know that wherever you sit, you are listening to my voice and watching my face on your screen. It takes a bit of imagination to accept that our connection is real, but something is happening between us, as it happened earlier with the service leaders and later for the end of the service, without the usual eye contact, recreating a subtle sense of togetherness that we usually found in our synagogues. But this is our new reality. We stay in touch, albeit remotely. We can talk to each other through the medium of microphone and cameras, seeing only the upper part of our bodies. We have managed to create an entirely online large gathering of liberal Jews in the UK and beyond, reaching out to more people that we would have done physically. So, what can we learn from this? This Shabbat, we are opening a new book of Torah called Bamidbar, in the wilderness. And this is how it starts. וידבר אדוני אל משה במדבר סיני באוהל מועד באחד לחודש השני בשנה השנית לצאתם מארץ מצרים. And the Eternal spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of a meeting, on the first day of the second month, in the second year after they came out of Egypt. The Torah gives us a very precise location and time, and it all happens in the wilderness of Sinai. The book starts with the census of the people, following by the start of their wanderings in the desert, organized around the tabernacle that was built in the previous book. The ark, the Aron HaKodesh, becomes a sort of sat-nav for their voyage in the desert, punctuating their journey and also their wars. But the central part of the book of Numbers describes something that is a recurring pattern. They are upset, anxious, distraught, and then they rebel against God, Moses and Aaron, moaning about the land they just left, and also expressing their fears for the future. There is here a very interesting dynamic between God and Moses. God gets angry, wants to punish the people, and Moses acts as an intercessor, trying to appease God's anger. It is quite hard to see God as a petulant, somehow impatient God. Torah teaches us here that life is hard, it is a learning curve, and we need to listen to the voice of a peacemaker, the one who gives perspective, as Moses did. I think today we can all relate to our ancestors' anxiety, to this deep sense of uncertainty that we're experiencing in the wilderness. They have left a world that was, if not entirely acceptable, at least familiar to them. They knew its unwritten rules, how to avoid its pitfalls, and then they took a leap of faith, trusted Moses, fled Egypt in a very dramatic way. What happens now? What is this promised land that Moses mentions all the time? The similarities with today's are rather striking. We have left behind a world in a dramatic way. We have been thrown into a new reality with this invisible virus lurking about, smiting people with unpredictable might and gravity. And we don't know where we are heading to. We don't know how the new world that awaits us will look like. We are being tried. We are being tested. Some of us have sadly lost their lives. Some of us have lost loved ones without the solace and comfort normally offered by our tradition. Some of us have been into hospital fighting the virus or have suffered what they call milder symptoms. A large majority of us won't, thankfully, experience this virus. But we are all like our ancestors in our personal wilderness, going through this time with anxiety, revolt, despondency, and sometimes guilt. Sometimes during the same day, we grapple with a whole range of emotions because we have given up, we have lost a major delusion. We have come to realize that we are not in control of our lives. How do we adjust to this new reality? How do we accept our powerlessness? Accepting that we do not have much control over our lives is actually a liberating thought, because it opens the possibility of a new world. It helps us to fight our inertia and to accept change. The world of tomorrow cannot and will not be like the world of yesterday. This pandemic has changed everything. The way we see the role of the government, the importance of a collective versus individualism, the necessity of working together to alleviate the burden of the suffering, the need for communities as places of solace and comfort, even virtually and remotely. The Babylonian Talmud tells us that after the destruction of the Second Temple, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai led a small group of Jewish refugees to the town of Yavne, where they set about rebuilding Judaism for the new realities they faced. Of course, COVID-19 does not have the same magnitude for us as Jews as the destruction of the temple, but we need, as they did, we need to reconsider Judaism in the face of this new reality. Over the centuries, many people have tried to give an all-encompassing definition of Judaism. For example, the Chabad Torah or Mitzvot, Judaism is about Torah or Mitzvot. the Orthodox definition of a derech eretz, or what Mordechai Kaplan coined in his book, Judaism as a Civilization. But we, in our small corner of a Jewish world, we have coined the expression collaborative Judaism, a Judaism of shutafut, of partnership between all lay leaders, rabbis, congregants, seeing ourselves as explorers of a tradition, at the same time reinventing it to make it relevant for us today. We have seen in these past 2 months how strong our communities have emerged from this pandemic, how resilient our members are. Working together in partnership, we have kept our communities going. We have offered online services, classes, social events, even pastoral care, and even this large biennial today. As liberal Jews, we have a message to the world. When this crisis is over, when we assess what has just happened and what lessons can be learned, remember what kept our world going. Not the powerful ones, not the rich ones, but the humble ones, those whom you have called key workers, all these people who have looked after you when you were ill in hospitals, all these people who have made sure that food was available in our supermarkets, who have cared for our elderly, who have collected our bins, who have delivered parcels and food. All these people who have ensured that communities carried on serving the public. I've witnessed this positive energy in my own community, Kingston Liberal Synagogue, and all over Liberal Judaism. Very quickly, we have taken the measure of the situation and acted accordingly. We are not heroes, we are human beings. Our communities have been laboratories of this new world that we want and we demand now. Places where people work together for the common good, caring for each other, valuing life above every other consideration, and exploring new ways to protect the environment. The future is holistic, compassionate, and respectful of life in all its forms, and respectful of the environment. That is our mission as liberal Jews, and that is our message to the world. Ken Yeh Ratzon, may it be God's will. Shabbat Shalom.
We are going to conclude our service with the words of a vision of an ideal future expressed in the prayer Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לדון הכל, לתת גדולה לייצר בראשית, אשר שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו וגורלנו להמליך מלכותו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, מושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו עינות, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחתנו. ונ אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
So as we turn to the Kaddish, we wanted to share the reflection, meditation in this Siddur from Rabbi Sheila Schulman, Zichrona Levracha. We recognize that each of us is not so much a person as a world, or rather the bearer in him, in her or his self of a world. A unique, irreplaceable, populated world linked by a myriad threads to other such worlds, and that if, when, someone dies who's been part of our life, there is a rent in the universe, like a star vanishing, but that like a star vanishing, that world leaves traces in us as a star does in space, so that we mourn, but we remember. And we know there will be a living trace of that person in our consciousness always. I can't help but think, as we gather here for this biennial, of all the rabbis, of all the teachers, of all our family that have gone before us, who've instructed, informed, inspired us in the lives that we lead. Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. And let us say the words of the Kaddish together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach Yehutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yom echon, u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam omer maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'al v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitada v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha brichu, leila min kol berchata v'sherata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiram b'yama v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Amen. And we finish this morning's service with a very unusual choice of Adon Olam. I hope you'll all join in from your homes.
Adon Olam asher malach hayama bye bye. B'terem kol yitzir nivra, aya bye bye. La'et nasa v'chefzo kol, aya bye bye. Azai melech shemo nikra, aya bye bye. Adon Olam asher malach, b'terem kol yitzir nivra, la'et nasa v'chefzo kol, azai melech shemo nikra. V'yacharek ihlot hakol, aya bye bye. Levado yimlok nora, aya bye bye. V'hu hayahu havei, aya bye bye. V'hu yeh b'tifara, aya bye bye. Adon Olam asher malach, b'terem kol yitzir nivra, la'et nasa v'chefzo kol, azai melech shemo nikra.
והוא אחד ואין שני, היה בבית המשי לו להחבירה, היה ביי ביי. בלי ראשית, בלי תכלית, היה ביי ביי. ולא העוז והמשרה, היה ביי ביי. אדון עולם, השם הלך, בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אז המלך שמו נקרא.
והוא אלי וחי גואלי, היה ביי ביי. וסוחב לי בעת צרה, היה ביי ביי. והוא נשיא ומנוס לי, היה ביי ביי. מנת כוסי ביום אגרע, היה ביי ביי. אדון עולם, השם הלך, בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אז המלך שמו נברא.
בידו הפקידוכי, היה ביי ביי. בעת אישן ועירה, היה ביי ביי. ואם רוחי גבייתי, היה ביי ביי. אדוני לי ולא הירא, היה ביי ביי.
אדון עולם, השם הלך, בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אז המלך שמו נקרא. אדון עולם, השם הלך, בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אז המלך שמו נקרא.
So as we've reached the end of our service, we pass over to our President of Liberal Judaism, Rabbi Dr. Andrew Goldstein, for the final blessing for all of us.
Asked to give a final blessing at this innovative and groundbreaking service, my mind went immediately to the words of the second Isaiah, who's also living in confusing and difficult times. Speaking God's words, he said, "Va'adchechu va'ashalem nuchami lo." I will guide them and give them comfort. And we pray that this service today and this unique conference has given us all guidance and comfort and encouragement. Isaiah continued, Borei needs safatayim. May words of praise be on our lips. Yes, words of praise has been brought to our lips and gratefulness in our minds for the ingenuity and hard work that has brought this service to our homes and brought us together as a large liberal Jewish family. And Isaiah's final words of blessing, Shalom, Shalom l'rachok v'lekarov, Amar Adonai. Peace, peace and well-being be to those who are far away and those who are near, says your God. And Shabbat Shalom. But now I will make Kiddush, and maybe you can do the same at home, or maybe you'll do it a little later. And so if you want to join with me, please, let's start by singing. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, Lazot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti li'olam, כי ששת ימים מסר אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And let's sing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to you all. What an incredibly inspiring and innovative service we've all enjoyed together this morning. And wonderful to end with the cheeky little smile of the President of Liberal Judaism. You can enjoy a little bit more of that smile in a few moments. If you would like to switch over now to Zoom, check out your email as one of the registered attendees at our biennial weekend, and you'll find a Zoom link to join Dad, Rabbi Dr. Andrew Goldstein, for a lunch and learn session. And then we've got lots more to look forward to today. So, Rafe.
Yes, once you have had your lunch and you are rested and sated, then we invite you to join us again at 1:30 for one of two sessions. We have a conversation between Matthew Gould and Lord Daniel Finkelstein, and for the younger or younger spirited members of Liberal Judaism, we have games and preparation for Havdalah with LJY Netzer, and they're both at 1:30.
So Bitter Von, enjoy your meal, go learn with Dad, and we'll see you later on for the session. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.